The Calendar Killer, 2025. The film opens amidst chaos. Emergency services are alerted by a distress call from Anna, who reports a death alongside multiple injuries. The dark subject revolves around a serial murderer identified as the Calendar Killer, infamous for inscribing his victims' dates of death in blood on walls. His chilling motto, "Him or you, one of you will die," sets the stage for a gripping narrative. We are introduced to Jules Tanberg, a volunteer for the Walk Me Home helpline, a service dedicated to supporting individuals on phone calls while they walk home during late hours. Jules receives a call from a distressed woman named Klara Vernet, who fears she is being followed. Terrified and clearly in peril, she confides in Jules that the Calendar Killer has threatened both her and her husband's lives, marking December 6th as their ominous date. As Klara's story unravels, she recounts a harrowing experience of waking up in a basement where a death threat was scrawled on the wall along with a photograph of herself and her spouse. She explains that no one, not the police or even her husband Martin, believed her account. Desperate and anxious, she hints at a history rife with trauma and fear, both of the killer and her partner. As Klara navigates the unsettling streets, she and Jules foster a connection through their conversation. We discover that she suffers from dissociative episodes, a condition that Martin exploits to manipulate her, often threatening her with psychiatric intervention. Klara opens up about the abusive dynamics of her relationship with Martin, revealing both emotional and physical abuse. Jules starts to suspect that her terror might not just stem from the Calendar Killer but also from the man who is supposed to protect her. Interwoven with Klara's narrative is Jules' own backstory. Once part of emergency services, he grapples with guilt surrounding the suicide of Dagina, the mother of his daughter Fabienne. This past trauma profoundly shapes his interactions with Klara, making her vulnerability and her potential for self-harm evoke deep emotions within him. In a striking contrast, we witness Klara and Martin's public persona at a lavish political gathering. Their relationship appears cold and performative, with Martin dominating Klara, belittling her at social events and coercing her to join him at an exclusive gathering termed VP Night at a hotel. It becomes dimly evident that Martin has drugged her and permitted her to be assaulted for both political leverage and personal gratification, marking a horrific peak in Klara's torment. Facing immense desperation, Klara once again reaches out to Jules. Overwhelmed by despair, she contemplates suicide, prompting Jules to urge her to remain connected with him. Through empathetic dialogue and persistent encouragement, he convinces her to fight for her daughter Amélie. Klara eventually discovers the inner strength to declare her desire to escape Martin and reclaim her autonomy. Following this pivotal decision, Klara returns to a cabin haunted by a past threat, only to uncover further chilling evidence: the stark words 12-06, "Him or you," etched in blood once more. This sight reinforces her belief in the Calendar Killer's existence, but it also ignites doubts regarding Martin's potential involvement. Could he be orchestrating this terror, manipulating her mental health struggles to control and instill fear in her? His continuous knowledge of her whereabouts raises critical questions. As suspense builds through the film, viewers are drawn into a harrowing tale that fuses themes of trauma, psychological manipulation, and the relentless pursuit of safety in the face of abject terror. Each character's complexity adds to the tension, pushing the narrative towards a climax that leaves audiences pondering the true nature of evil, whether it stems from a shadowy killer or emerges from within the confines of a home where terror is masked as love. The intertwining fates of Klara, Jules, and the sinister Calendar Killer compel contemplation about survival, agency, and the unseen scars that mark human lives. In The Calendar Killer, a psychological thriller set in Berlin, Klara Vernet finds herself entangled in a web of terror, manipulation, and brutal truths. The narrative kicks off with a series of gruesome murders attributed to a disturbing serial killer known as the Calendar Killer, who ominously inscribes his victims' dates of demise in blood, predicting their deaths with alarming accuracy. The killer's motives remain perplexing, casting an unsettling shadow over the unfolding story. Klara, however, is not merely a target of this malevolent force. She grapples with a more immediate and personal horror: her husband Martin. Martin holds a significant political position, managing a facade of calm and authority. Yet behind closed doors, he reveals himself to be emotionally manipulative, coercive, and physically abusive. He takes advantage of Klara's history of mental illness, using it as a weapon to instill fear and compliance. He threatens institutionalization at any sign of rebellion, cunningly undermining her grasp on reality and instilling a sense of helplessness. Amidst this chaos, Klara rushes back to the city seeking refuge and assistance. She hitches a ride from a man in a Santa costume named Hendrik, who initially seems amicable and supportive. For a fleeting moment, Klara dares to trust him, but her moment of relief is abruptly shattered when Martin appears. He abducts her from the car with violent force, hurling accusations of hysteria and dragging her back home, calm on the surface yet menacingly threatening her with recommitment. Upon returning to their home, Martin belittles Klara's fears concerning the Calendar Killer, framing them as delusions. However, as the story unfolds, it becomes apparent that Martin has been gaslighting Klara, potentially orchestrating the threats she faces. When Klara discovers a marked warning at their cabin, she presents this evidence to Martin, yet he dismisses it outright. He either remains oblivious to the truth or knows far more than he admits. As Klara's entrapment deepens, Martin's behavior morphs into increasing abuse and possessiveness, compelling her to prepare for an eventual escape. Complicating matters, her young daughter Amélie falls ill, making it impossible for Klara to leave her behind. Just as fears escalate, Klara receives a final urgent message from Jules, a figure she believed keenly attuned to her plight. He warns her that the peril isn't over yet as the date draws near. In a chilling climax, Klara returns to her apartment only to find Jules waiting uninvited. Initially perceived as a savior, Jules reveals himself to be the calendar killer, dismantling any remaining solace Klara could cling to. He confesses to witnessing Martin's abuse via hidden cameras he had placed in the cabin, exposing his obsessive quest for retribution against a backdrop of personal loss and trauma. Jules offers Klara a harrowing choice: either kill Martin or face death herself. With the countdown to midnight December 6 pressing down upon her, Klara finds herself torn between vengeance and the instinct to survive. In a dramatic twist, she seizes the moment, turning the weapon on Jules, instead delivering a fatal stab wound to protect herself and Amelie. After this tumultuous confrontation, the narrative takes an unexpected turn. Martin survives the encounter, but the emergence of incriminating video evidence brings to light his abusive behavior and manipulative tactics, including the infamous VP night. The shocking footage ignites a public scandal, culminating in Martin's arrest during an award ceremony intended to celebrate public service, a poetic justice for Klara and a fitting end to Martin's reign of terror. Ultimately, Klara emerges from the harrowing ordeal transformed. She's no longer the frightened woman trapped in darkness, but a resilient survivor who has exposed both her husband's treachery and the true nature of the man who attempted to dictate her fate. Her journey is a testament to the strength found in reclaiming one's life and the courage it takes to confront one's demons. The story is centered around Klara, who seeks support from the Walk Me Home helpline, a volunteer service for nighttime safety. She connects with Jules Tanberg, a former emergency dispatcher, during a distressing episode where she fears being stalked by the calendar killer. He has threatened to murder either her or her husband on December 6, which is not only a terrifying declaration but also marks their wedding anniversary. As Klara speaks to Jules during their tense conversations, it becomes evident that her predicament extends beyond the mere threat of a serial killer. Klara recounts a traumatic experience where she was drugged and assaulted at a high society party that her husband Martin coerced her into attending. This event masqueraded as a charitable gathering but was laced with sinister elements, including coercive sexual activities. Klara harbors suspicions that Martin is closely monitoring her, possibly even orchestrating the threats against her life to further destabilize her mental state. Her fear is compounded by a sense of paranoia fueled by Martin's gaslighting tactics and her past trauma. Despite her terror, Klara remains resolute in her desire to protect herself and her 6-year-old daughter Amelie. When she goes to the police for assistance, her efforts yield no results as Martin downplays her fears, insinuating that her concerns are unfounded. Conversely, Jules becomes a listening ear, offering her understanding in a world that seems indifferent to her plights. As the narrative progresses through flashbacks, we witness Klara's transformation into a figure isolated by her fears, alongside her turbulent relationship with Martin and her experiences in psychiatric care. Despite her apparent vulnerability, Klara exhibits an underlying resilience, recognizing that there is something profoundly amiss not only in her marriage but with the very real threat against her life. Jules, who is fighting his own battles, carries the heaviness of having lost his ex-partner Dajana to suicide after her time in an institution. He feels an irremovable guilt for not being able to save her and now channels that pain into a protective instinct for Klara, seeing reflections of Dajana in her. The plot intensifies when Klara escapes to a secluded cabin known only to Martin, where she discovers a chilling message from the calendar killer, 12-06 or U, offering her substantial evidence that someone is stalking her. She grapples with the daunting realization that either Martin could be the killer or that someone is attempting to frame him or her. As Klara makes her way back to Berlin, she is unwittingly picked up by a man in a Santa costume named Hendrik, who offers her a ride, giving her a fleeting sense of safety. However, this moment is shattered when Martin shows up, violently abducting her and bringing her back to their home. Inside the apartment, Martin oscillates between charm and intimidation, making it clear that he believes he still possesses control over her. Nevertheless, Klara's resolve has strengthened and she is determined to reclaim her autonomy. The story captures Klara's journey through fear, isolation, and the quest for survival amidst psychological manipulation and a looming threat to her life. Jules serves as a transformative figure in her life, symbolizing hope in a harrowing situation while battling his own unresolved grief. The tension escalates as Klara faces the very real dangers posed by Martin and potentially the calendar killer, driving her towards a confrontation between her past traumas and her instinctual fight for freedom. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.